Good morning, everyone. In today's class, we will try to understand the remaining part of comedy. That is, this class is continuation of yesterday's class. Okay, so let us begin with the third type of comedy. That is comedy of manners. The comedy of manners originated in new comedy of Greek Menander. Okay, this new comedy is distinguished from the old comedy which was represented by Aristophanes. I think you know the name of Aristophanes. In the previous class, we came across who Aristophanes was and what was his contribution. Okay, so the comedy of manners originated in the new comedy, which was led by Menander. Just try to remember that, and developed by the Roman dramatist Plautus and Terence. This may be a question, important question. Who developed comedy of manners? Then you will have to answer that there were Plautus and Terence during the 3rd and 2nd centuries BC. Comedy of manners deals with the relations and intrigues of man and woman living in a sophisticated upper class society. This is a kind of definition. You can just remember what comedy of manners is and what is the main focus of comedy of manners. Then you will have to answer that such kind of comedy of manners deal with the relationships or the intrigues of men and women living in a sophisticated and upper class society. Okay, creation of comic effects is noticed through witty dialogues and conversation, often in the form of repartee. This is another important literary term. We will come to uh, know about repartee in the next class, most probably while we will be discussing the literary terms starting with R. Okay, so just remember the term for now. Violation of social standards is a common subject of comedy of manners. So what may be the subjects of comedy of manners? One may be the relationship or the intrigues between man and woman in a sophisticated and upper class society. Next may be the violation of social standards uh, in a society. Okay, generally the immoral characters, jealous husbands, illegitimate relationships, foppish dandies, harmful and immoral rivals, etc., are common elements of comedy of manners. Okay, try to remember the marked sentences and the phrases. Okay, basically, this comedy of manners come under the Restoration comedy during 1660 to 1700, which was inspired by the French writer Molière. This is one of the most important information that you have to remember. What is that? During the Restoration period, the comedies, the plays, the drama that were originated, that were in prime focus, were the comedy of manners. They were completely immoral, representing the sexual attitudes, representing the sophisticated upper class society, representing the intrigues of the man and woman, representing all the negative of the society. Okay, during the Restoration period. Actually, before the Restoration period, for a couple of years, the drama or the play uh, was abolished from the society. The play was banned in that particular society, and suddenly, during the Restoration period, it came into existence again. This is why they came up with immoral things. They came up with uh, the things which are not so acceptable for the society. So, comedy of manners came into existence again during the Restoration period, that is the Restoration comedy, are also uh, known as the comedy of manners. I think you can understand what comedy of manners now. Okay, it presents the manner, okay, in a comic way, the manner of the people, the mannerism of the people, in a comic way. Now, coming to the examples, number one is Shakespeare's Love's Labour's Lost. Number two, Shakespeare's Much Ado About Nothing. These are also examples of uh, comedy of manners. William Congreve's The Way of the World, 1700. This is a Restoration comedy. William Wycherley's The Country Wife, 1675. This is also a Restoration comedy. That is, these two also come under the category of comedy of manners. Oliver Goldsmith's She Stoops to Conquer, 1773. Oscar Wilde's The Importance of Being Honest, 1895. These are also important examples of comedy of manners. You just go through the story of these comedy of manners and you will get to know what actually the characteristics are, what actually the internal evidences that we can find, okay, to relate them with comedy of manners. Now, there is another concept, there is another type of comedy which is related to Harold Pinter and his plays, and this is known as comedy of Menace. Okay, comedy of Menace is that kind of comedy where the laughter of the audience in some or other situation is immediately followed by a feeling of some upcoming disaster. That is, laughter is there in that particular comedy, but the laughter is followed by a kind of feeling of some kind of upcoming disaster. Okay, you just go through the birthday party, then you will come to know what comedy of Menace is. This comedy of Menace is coined by, this is a term, this is a phrase which was coined by David Campton. This is important information for you. Just try to remember. So, comedy of Menace is a kind of comedy, and where we can see not only the comedy, but the feeling of tragedy is also there just after the comedy. The comedy itself signifies that there's some kind of tragedy will happen, okay, after some time. So such kind of comedy is known as comedy of Menace. You just go through the example, okay? You will come to know what actually this is. I'm just unable to make you understand without delving into the example, okay? Now see, the next type of comedy, farce. It is a type of comedy designed to provoke the audience to simple, hearty laughter, that is belly laugh, generally in the theater hall. Okay, farce is a very low kind of comedy where we can see that very simple kind of uh, laughter, that is immediate laughter, the belly laughter can be seen in such kind of situation. Okay, farce is actually not the whole play. Okay, it is just part of the play, part of a comic play. To do so, that is to make the audience laugh. The playwright commonly employs foolish behavior of the character, physical bustle of the character, often uses the verbal humor, and then highly exaggerated and caricature type of characters, and the improbable and ludicrous situation of the characters that he or she is facing. That is, the characters put into an improbable and ludicrous situation. Okay, such kind of situation actually make the audience laugh. Okay, there is no thought-provoking situation is created by this kind of farce. Farce was actually a component in a comic episode uh, in the medieval miracle plays as well. For example, the plays like Noah, Second Sappho's play, we can find some episodes there, some kind of situations there where we laugh very loudly, okay, and to get some kind of relief. Such kind of comic episodes are being introduced. Okay, first is usually an episode actually in a more complex form of comedy. For example, highly comic scene of Shakespeare's plays like The Taming of Shrew, The Merry Wives of Windsor. Here we can find some episodes where we laugh very loudly without thinking for a moment. Okay, the such kind of low kind of comedy, uh, very transitory and very temporary type of comedy is known as farce. Okay, I think you got the answer, you got the meaning of farce. Now coming to two other different types of comedy based on quality of the comedy. Number one is high comedy and number two is low comedy. You just try to remember these two types of comedy as well. High comedy evokes intellectual laughter or thoughtful laughter. Okay, this was described by George Meredith in his essay The Idea of Comedy in 1877. This is an information that you have to remember. He considers that the comedy of manners are the examples of high comedy. Okay, high comedy evokes intellectual laughter, not a kind of very low thinking. Okay, it is not a kind of laughter which is evoked very suddenly and ends very quickly. It is not like that. It happens in low comedy. I have already told you low comedy is a kind of comedy where no intellectual appeal is there. Laughter is aroused by the jokes, by the clownish physical activities of the characters, by the other types of very temporary type of things which are not to be remembered forever. Okay, for example, the farce. The farce can be considered as the low comedy. I think you understood what high comedy and low comedy are, and what are the differences between high and low comedy, and who coined high comedy, and in which work he coined but that particular term. Okay, these are the important things that we have discussed today. We discussed farce today. We discussed comedy of Menace. We discussed comedy of manner. I think you understood what we discussed in this class today. So I think you will be able to retain all these things which we have discussed so far. So this is the end of the class of comedy today. I think you will remember everything what we discussed. So thank you.